When you disappeared without a word, she wasn't ready. She expected you to chase. She thought you'd explain yourself. She believed silence was just another way to say, "I'll be back," but you didn't come back. And for the first time, she had to sit in the silence, alone. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't a game. It was what the Stoics call apatheia, a state where your peace no longer depends on someone else's reaction. You weren't being cold. You were being clear. You had finally learned what most men never do. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Because when words stop working, when boundaries are ignored, and when respect is no longer mutual, silence becomes the loudest message. And Stoicism teaches us something most forget in moments like this. Your energy is too valuable to be wasted, proving your worth to someone who refuses to see it. So you walked away, not to teach her a lesson, but to remember your own. You disappeared without warning, not to punish her, but to protect your peace. And what happened next was something no one expected. She changed. But before we get into how her world shifted, how silence taught her more than arguments ever did, do this one thing for yourself. If you've ever felt like walking away was your only way to stay sane, hit that subscribe button. Because here on Stoic Think, we talk about real strength, quiet discipline, and the kind of self-control that makes you unshakable. Now let's talk about what your silence really did to her. 2. Her awakening. At first, your silence felt like betrayal. She replayed every word, every fight, every moment she thought she had control. She texted, then called, then got angry. And when none of that brought you back, the panic turned into confusion. Because you weren't supposed to go quiet. Not like this, but silence has a strange way of becoming a mirror. When there's no one left to blame, when there's no argument to win, you're forced to look at yourself. And that's exactly what happened to her. She started to wonder, was she too controlling? Too dismissive? Did she cross a line she didn't see? And maybe for the first time, she began to see you not as someone weak for walking away, but as someone strong enough to stop dancing in circles. Someone who chose stillness over chaos. A man who didn't need drama to feel alive. Stoicism teaches us this. You don't control others. You only control yourself, your reactions, your standards, your exit. And when a man truly understands that, he stops begging to be understood. He just leaves. Your disappearance wasn't about creating pain. It was about ending the cycle. And that's what made it powerful. In your absence, she had to face the echo of her own behavior. No one to push, no one to test. Just the truth of what happens when you run out of people willing to tolerate disrespect. And that's when the shift began. But here's the twist. Her life didn't just change because she missed you. It changed because your silence forced her to grow. 3. The shift in her and the power of calm. Your silence became the turning point. Not just for her, but for you. See, something strange happens when a man stops chasing and starts preserving. The world notices, and she noticed. At first, it was just confusion, then regret. But eventually, it became reflection. For the first time, she wasn't thinking about how to get your attention. She was thinking about why she lost it in the first place. And that is what Stoics call clarity born from distance. You didn't shame her. You didn't throw blame. You simply removed yourself from the storm. And without someone to fight against, she had to wrestle with her own chaos. That's when growth kicked in. She started reading more, working on herself, asking different questions. She began to understand what you had been asking for all along. Peace, respect, emotional maturity. And not just from her, but from herself. It was never about you trying to fix her. That was never your job. Stoicism teaches you can't save someone who refuses to save themselves. All you can do is live your values and protect your space. And that's what you did. Here's the quiet truth. You don't transform people with force. You do it with presence. And if that doesn't work, you do it with absence. And your absence, it spoke volumes. You weren't angry. You were finished. Not out of bitterness, but out of discipline. You were finally done investing energy into someone who couldn't match it. Now she's different. She doesn't speak the same. She doesn't move the same. And if life brings her back to you, it won't be the same version of her you left behind. And maybe you won't be the same either. If this message speaks to something deep in you, if you've ever walked away not out of hate but out of healing, then don't just scroll past. Subscribe to Stoic Think, because in a world full of noise, we teach the strength of stillness. 4. The reflection and the return to self. Now here's the final truth most men miss. It was never about her changing. It was about you remembering who you are. Because the real victory wasn't in her missing you. It was in you no longer needing to be missed. When you walked away, it wasn't to prove a point. It was to protect a principle, your peace, your values, your emotional discipline. And when a man operates from that place, he no longer asks, will she come back? He asks, am I still aligned with who I said I'd be? That's what Stoicism sharpens in you. It doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. It doesn't make you heartless, it gives your heart boundaries, because being a Stoic doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you love with wisdom. You give without losing yourself. You speak when it matters, and you're silent when it's time to walk away. She may come back, she may even be better, but the man you've become, he doesn't build his life waiting for that. You're not here to be a reaction. You're here to be a foundation, calm, grounded, focused. So if you've ever had to walk away to find yourself again, if you've ever realized that silence was the loudest truth you could offer, remember this: you didn't lose her, you found you. And that's the most Stoic thing you could ever do. If this spoke to your story, don't just nod in silence. Subscribe to Stoic Think and share this with a brother who needs the reminder. Strength isn't in holding on, it's in knowing when to let go and never looking back. 5. The quiet strength that changed everything. In the end, it wasn't the argument that changed her. It wasn't the long texts, the late night calls, or the emotional highs and lows. It was your silence, your absence, your decision to walk away, not in anger, but in peace. That's what Stoicism gives you. The ability to let go with grace, to choose stillness over struggle, to lead with principles instead of pride. You didn't need to slam the door. You didn't need to prove your worth. You simply remembered it. And because you did, her life changed. Yours did too, and the world noticed. So let this be your reminder. The strongest move a man can make is often the quietest one. You don't need to shout. You don't need to explain. Sometimes all you need is the courage to walk away. If this message resonated, if you see yourself in this journey, subscribe to Stoic Think, because here we're not just talking about Stoicism, we're living it, one calm, unshakable step at a time.